Captain Lee Dong-soo stared at the view screen as thousands of dead ships floated in the darkness ahead. The Theta graveyard stretched for light years in every direction. Twisted metal hulks drifted like ghosts, each one telling the story of some ancient battle that nobody remembered anymore. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said Park Ji-ho from his engineering station. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked his controls. "There's an energy reading deep in the graveyard. It's faint, but it's definitely there." Dong-soo rubbed his tired eyes. The crew of the New Soul had been searching for salvage for 3 weeks now. They needed something valuable to make this trip worth the risk. The Theta graveyard was dangerous territory. Ships that went too deep into it had a habit of never coming back out. "What kind of energy?" Dong-soo asked. "I don't know, sir. My instruments can't identify it. But it's coming from the center of the graveyard, where all the biggest wrecks are." "Navigator." Kim So-ra looked up from her charts. Her face was pale with worry. "Captain, I have to advise against going deeper. The records show that every expedition to the center has disappeared. No distress calls, no wreckage found, nothing. They just vanish." Dong-soo knew she was right. The smart thing would be to turn around and head back to human space with whatever small salvage they had already collected. But something about that energy reading bothered him. In all his years as a salvage captain, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, his instincts were telling him that whatever was out there was important. "How big is the source of that energy?" he asked Park Ji-ho. The engineer checked his readings again. "It's massive, Captain. Whatever is generating it has to be the size of a battleship, maybe bigger." Security Chief Choi Min-ho crossed his arms. He was a big man with scars on his hands from too many boarding actions. "Captain, if there's something that big still generating power after all these years, maybe there's a reason other ships don't come back from investigating it." "Maybe," Dong-soo said. "Or maybe we're the first ones brave enough to actually find out what's in there." He made his decision. "So-ra, plot a course for that energy source. Ji-ho, keep monitoring those readings. Min-ho, get your security team ready. We're going to take a look." The New Soul moved deeper into the graveyard. The dead ships around them grew larger and stranger as they traveled toward the center. Dong-soo saw vessels from dozens of different alien species. Some had hulls made of what looked like grown crystal. Others were built from metals that seemed to bend light around them. All of them were dark and silent. "The energy signature is getting stronger," Park Ji-ho reported. "Whatever's generating it is just ahead." Kim So-ra suddenly gasped. "Captain, look at the view screen." Dong-soo turned to look and felt his breath catch in his throat. Rising out of the field of dead ships was something that didn't belong in any graveyard. It was a vessel unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship was huge, easily twice the size of the largest human battleship. Its hull was made of some kind of black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange patterns covered its surface, lines that might have been decorative or might have been functional. It was impossible to tell. But the most unsettling thing about the ship was how perfect it looked. While every other vessel in the graveyard showed signs of battle damage or age, this black ship appeared to be in perfect condition. It looked like it had been built yesterday. "My God," whispered Dr. Yoon Hae-jin from her science station. "Do you know what we're looking at?" Dong-soo shook his head. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What is it, Doctor?" "If the stories are true, that's the Void Cutter, the ship that ended the Great Convergence War 300 years ago. It appeared out of nowhere and destroyed entire fleets before vanishing. Most people think it's just a legend." "Legends don't generate energy readings," Park Ji-ho said, his voice shaking slightly. Choi Min-ho stepped closer to the view screen. "If that thing is the Void Cutter, then we need to be very careful. The stories say it killed millions." Dr. Yoon Hae-jin nodded. "The reports from the war describe a ship that could appear and disappear at will. It used weapons that no one understood. Some survivors claimed it could phase through solid matter or strike from multiple positions at once. But it's been silent for centuries," Dong-soo said. "Maybe whatever made it so dangerous is gone now." Kim So-ra checked her instruments. "Captain, I'm not detecting any active weapons or shields, but my sensors can't penetrate that hull. I have no idea what's inside." Dong-soo studied the alien ship. Every instinct told him to turn around and leave, but he also knew that finding the Void Cutter, if that's what it really was, would be the discovery of a lifetime. The technology on that ship could change everything for humanity. "Can we dock with it?" he asked. Park Ji-ho ran a scan. "There's what looks like a docking port on the starboard side. The design is strange, but I think our equipment can connect to it." "Captain," Kim So-ra said urgently, "this is a bad idea. We don't know what's on that ship or why it's still generating power after all this time." "She's right," Choi Min-ho added. "For all we know, that thing is some kind of trap. Maybe that's why the other expeditions never came back." Dong-su looked at each member of his crew. They were all good people who had followed him on dozens of dangerous salvage operations. He had no right to risk their lives for his curiosity, but he also knew that opportunities like this came once in a lifetime. "I'm not ordering anyone to board that ship," he said finally, "but I'm going aboard myself. Anyone who wants to come with me can volunteer." To his surprise, every member of the crew stepped forward. "If you're going, Captain, we're going with you," Choi Min-ho said. "That's what a crew does." Dong-su felt a surge of pride in his people. "All right then. So-ra, bring us alongside that docking port. Ji-ho, prepare for docking procedures. Min-ho, arm your security team. And everyone remember we have no idea what we're going to find in there." As the new soul moved closer to the mysterious black ship, Dong-su couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to change the course of history. He just hoped they would all live to see what came next. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud that echoed through the ship. Whatever lay beyond, that airlock was about to reveal its secrets to humanity. The airlock hissed open, and Captain Lee Dong-su stepped into darkness. His flashlight beam cut through the black interior of the alien ship, revealing walls that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. The corridor stretched ahead of them, wider than any hallway he had ever seen on a human vessel. "The air is breathable," Dr. Yoon Hai-jin said, checking her scanner. "Oxygen levels are actually perfect for humans. That's strange." Choi Min-ho kept his weapon ready as he moved beside the captain. "Sir, look at these walls. They're not made of metal." Dong-su reached out to touch the wall surface. It felt warm and smooth, like polished stone, but it pulsed slightly under his fingertips. Strange patterns ran along the walls, glowing with a soft blue light that seemed to respond to their presence. "It's some kind of organic technology," Park Ji-ho whispered. "I've never seen anything like it. The walls are alive." Kim So-ra pointed her scanner down the corridor. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy sources deeper in the ship. Whatever powers this thing, it's still running." They moved forward slowly, their footsteps echoing in the strange hallway. The ceiling above them was covered with what looked like crystalline growths that gave off a gentle light. As they walked, the patterns on the walls began to change, flowing and shifting like water. "It knows we're here," Dr. Yoon Hae-jin said softly. "The ship is reacting to us." After what felt like hours of walking, they reached a large chamber. The room was circular, with a raised platform in the center. On the platform sat what could only be the ship's control center, but instead of buttons and screens, there were flowing pools of liquid light and crystal formations that hummed with energy. "My God!" Dong-su breathed. "This is the bridge!" As they approached the control platform, the entire room suddenly came to life. The walls began to glow brighter, and a deep sound filled the air, like the heartbeat of some massive creature. The liquid pools on the control platform started to swirl and dance. Then something spoke to them. Not with words, but with images that appeared directly in their minds. They saw stars being born and dying, galaxies spinning through space, and battles between ships they couldn't recognize. "Can everyone else see this?" Kim So-ra asked, her voice shaking. "I see it," Choi Min-ho replied. "But what is it?" Dr. Yoon Hai-jin stepped closer to the control platform. "I think it's trying to communicate with us. This is some kind of telepathic interface." The images in their minds shifted, showing them a great war that had raged across the galaxy long ago. They saw the black ship, the Void Cutter, appearing in battle after battle, destroying enemy fleets with weapons that bent space and time. But then the images showed something else. They saw other crews trying to operate the ship, aliens with multiple arms, beings made of pure energy, creatures they had no names for. All of them had tried to control the Void Cutter, and all of them had failed. "It's showing us its history," Dr. Yoon Hai-jin said. "This ship has been waiting for the right crew for centuries." A new voice entered their minds, ancient and tired, but somehow curious. It spoke in concepts rather than words, but they could understand it clearly. "Who are you?" the voice asked. "You are not like the others who have come before." Captain Dongsu stepped forward, though he felt foolish talking to empty air. "We're humans. We came from Earth." "Humans," the voice repeated, as if tasting the word. "You are young. Your species has only just begun to reach for the stars." "Why are you here?" "We were looking for salvage," Dongsu said honestly. "We detected energy from your ship and came to investigate." The voice seemed amused. "Salvage. You sought to take pieces of the dead to sell, but instead you found me." "What are you?" Dr. Yoon-Hae-jin asked. "I am Kethmore, the mind of this vessel. I was created by the architects to be the perfect weapon. But a weapon without purpose is just destruction waiting to happen. I have waited for a crew that could give me purpose." Park Ji-ho looked around the strange bridge. "What happened to your original crew?" "The architects transcended physical existence long ago. They left me here to wait for those who would be worthy to carry on their work. Many have tried. All have failed." "What made them fail?" Dongsu asked. Images flashed through, their minds again. They saw alien crews being consumed by the ship's power, their minds burned out by energies they couldn't handle. Others became obsessed with conquest, using the ship's weapons to destroy everything in their path until Kethmore was forced to shut down to stop them. "They lacked what you humans seem to possess," Kethmore explained. "Flexibility, creativity. The ability to adapt and change. Most species think in rigid patterns. But your minds are different. You see possibilities where others see only rules." Pilot Jang Woo-jin, who had been quiet until now, stepped toward one of the control pools. "Can we operate your systems?" "Touch the interface," Kethmore instructed. "Let us see if you are truly different." Woo-jin hesitated for a moment, then placed his hand in the swirling liquid light. The reaction was immediate. The entire ship shuddered, and suddenly Woo-jin's eyes rolled back as information flooded his mind. He could see every system on the ship, feel its engines humming with power, sense the weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. "I can fly it," he gasped. "I can actually fly this thing. It's not like piloting a regular ship. It responds to what I think, not just what I do." The other crew members looked at each other in amazement. Park Ji-ho moved to another control station and carefully touched it. Instantly, he understood how the ship's engines worked, how they drew power from dimensions beyond normal space. "This is incredible," he said. "The technology is thousands of years ahead of anything we have, but somehow I can understand it." "Yes," Kethmore said, and there was satisfaction in the ancient voice. "You adapt. You learn. You do not try to force the ship to work the way you think it should. You let it teach you how it actually works." Dr. Yoon-Hae-jin approached another station. "What was your original mission?" "To protect the innocent and stop those who would use power to crush the weak." The architects believed that eventually a species would arise that shared their values, a species that would use great power responsibly. Captain Dongsu felt the weight of what they had discovered. "You think we're that species?" "I do not know, yet. But you are the first to successfully interface with my systems without being destroyed or corrupted. That is promising." Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Kim So-ra checked her instruments and went pale. "Captain, we have a problem. I'm detecting multiple ships approaching. They're big, and they're not human." Kethmore's voice became urgent. "The activation of my systems has sent a signal across the galaxy. Those who have ruled through fear and oppression for centuries know that I am awake again. They come to destroy me before I can fulfill my purpose." On the main view screen, which had activated when they touched the controls, they could see a fleet of alien warships emerging from hyperspace. The ships were massive and sleek, with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. "Who are they?" Dongsu asked. "The hegemony of Kalar. They have enslaved or destroyed dozens of species. They will not allow me to threaten their power." Choi Min-ho gripped, his weapon tighter. "How many ships?" Kim So-ra checked her readings. 200, maybe more. "They believe overwhelming numbers will be enough," Kethmore said. They do not understand what we have become together. Captain Dong Su looked at his crew, seeing fear and determination in equal measure on their faces. They had come looking for salvage and instead found themselves at the center of a galactic conflict. "Can we fight them?" he asked. Kethmore's response filled them with both hope and terror. "Together we can do things that will reshape the galaxy. But first, we must survive what comes next." Admiral Tae-Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of his massive flagship and watched the Theta graveyard grow larger on his view screen. His forearms moved gracefully as he studied the tactical displays, his scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights. The Kalar had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. Today would be no different. "Report," he commanded in his species' clicking language. 200 ships in formation, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "The target is at the center of the graveyard. It appears to be a single vessel of unknown design." Tae-Kyung-soo's large eyes narrowed. "Unknown design? Our databases contain information on every ship type in the galaxy." "Yes, Admiral. But this one is different. Our sensors show it's massive, but we cannot get detailed readings. Something is interfering with our scans." The Admiral moved to his command station. He had ruled this sector for 50 years, crushing rebellion after rebellion. A single ship, no matter how advanced, could not stand against the might of the hegemony. "What of the crew? How many beings are aboard?" "Unknown, Admiral. Our intelligence suggests it may be operated by humans." Tae-Kyung-soo let out a sound that was part laugh, part snarl. "Humans? Those primitive newcomers who have barely learned to travel between stars? This will be easier than I thought." On the communications station, lights began flashing. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and the face of Captain Lee Dong-soo appeared. Tae-Kyung-soo studied the human with interest. The creature looked so fragile, with only 2 arms and soft pink skin. "I am Admiral Tae-Kyung-soo of the Kalar hegemony," the Admiral said in standard galactic. "You are trespassing in restricted space. Power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded." Dong-soo's expression didn't change. "This is Captain Lee Dong-soo of the New Seoul. We're in international salvage waters. We have every right to be here." "Rights?" Tae-Kyung-soo found the concept amusing. "The only rights in this galaxy are those granted by the hegemony. You will surrender immediately, or we will take your ship by force." "I don't think so," Dong-soo replied calmly. "We're not looking for trouble, but we won't back down from it either." The Admiral's patience ran out. These humans clearly needed to learn their place in the galactic order. "You face 200 warships with a single vessel. Your bravery is admirable but foolish. This is your final warning." "Thank you for the warning," Dong-soo said. "Here's ours." The transmission cut off. Tae-Kyung-soo turned to his weapons officer. "Destroy them." On the Void Cutter, Captain Dong-soo felt the ship respond to his thoughts before he even spoke them aloud. The connection between his crew and Kethmore had grown stronger in the past hour. He could sense pilot Jang Woo-jin's readiness at the navigation controls, feel Park Ji-ho's understanding of the ship's power systems, and know that weapons specialist Lim Jae-sung was ready to defend them. 200 ships, Kim Sora reported from her station. "They're moving into attack formation. Can we run?" Choi Min-ho asked. "We could flee," Kethmore's voice echoed in their minds. "But they will only pursue us and destroy innocent colonies to draw us out. Better to end this here." Dr. Yoon Hai-jin looked up from her console. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups from their weapons. They're preparing to fire everything they have at us." Dong-soo closed his eyes and felt the ship around him. The Void Cutter was alive, eager to move, ready to show these oppressors what real power looked like. "Can we take them?" "Together we can do anything," Kethmore replied. "But you must trust me completely. What we are about to do will seem impossible." Dong-soo said. The hegemony fleet opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams lanced through space toward the black ship, enough firepower to destroy a small moon streaked toward their target. Then something happened that Admiral Tae-Kyung-soo would remember for the rest of his life. The Void Cutter simply wasn't there anymore. One moment it was floating in the center of the graveyard. The next it had vanished completely. The massive energy barrage struck empty space, lighting up the darkness between dead ships. "Where did it go?" the Admiral roared. Unknown, sir. It just disappeared from our sensors. The answer came a moment later when the Void Cutter materialized directly behind the hegemony formation. But it wasn't just in one place. The black ship seemed to exist in multiple locations at once, appearing as a dozen ghostly images spread throughout the enemy fleet. Lim Jae-sung felt the ship's weapons systems merge with his consciousness. He didn't aim the guns in any traditional sense. Instead, he simply thought about targets, and the Void Cutter's impossible weapons responded. Beams of twisted space-time reached out from the ship, touching enemy vessels and causing them to fold in on themselves. 3 hegemony cruisers crumpled like paper as gravity weapons compressed them into tiny spheres of dense matter. 2 more. Ships found their hulls phase-shifted into different dimensions, causing them to break apart as parts of their structure existed in different realities. "Impossible!" Admiral Tae Kyung-soo shouted. "No ship can do this!" But the Void Cutter was just getting started. Pilot Jang Woo-jin pushed the ship through maneuvers that violated every law of physics he had ever learned. The vessel moved through solid matter, appeared in multiple places simultaneously, and struck from angles that shouldn't have existed. Park Ji-ho felt the ship's engines drawing power from the quantum foam itself, tapping into energies that existed between dimensions. The more impossible the maneuver, the more power became available to them. "Form defensive positions," the Admiral ordered. "Concentrate fire on that ship." But every time the hegemony forces tried to target the Void Cutter, it was somewhere else. The ship moved like liquid darkness, flowing around their attacks and striking back with weapons that turned matter itself into a weapon. Kim So-ra watched her tactical display in amazement. "Captain, we've destroyed 50 ships in the first 5 minutes. They can't even hit us." The hegemony fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming moments before, was being torn apart by a single vessel operated by 6 humans and an ancient artificial mind. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being reduced to space debris by weapons they couldn't understand. Admiral Tae Kyung-soo realized he was witnessing something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The humans weren't just operating the legendary ship. They had awakened it, made it whole in a way that no other species had managed. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships, fall back to hyperspace." But the Void Cutter wasn't finished. As the remaining hegemony ships tried to escape, the ancient vessel opened what could only be described as holes in reality itself. Several fleeing ships found themselves pulled into these tiers in space-time, disappearing into dimensions unknown. When the battle was over, only a handful of the 200 hegemony ships remained. They limped away into hyperspace, carrying news of their defeat back to their masters. Captain Dong-soo slumped in his command chair, exhausted from the mental strain of interfacing with the ship's systems. Around him, his crew looked equally drained, but victorious. "Is it over?" Dr. Yoon Hae-jin asked. "This was only the beginning," Kethmore warned them. "What we have done today will spread across the galaxy. The hegemony has ruled through fear for centuries. Now they know that fear can work both ways." Kim So-ra checked her long-range sensors. "Captain, I'm picking up communications across multiple star systems. Word of the battle is already spreading." Choi Min-ho looked at the debris field where a mighty fleet had been destroyed. "What happens now?" Dong-soo stood up slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. They were no longer just a salvage crew. They had become something much more important and much more dangerous. "Now we find out what it really means to have the galaxy's deadliest ship," he said. "And we hope we're worthy of the power we've been given." Across the galaxy, oppressed species were hearing impossible news. The hegemony had been defeated. Humans and their mysterious ship had done what no one thought possible. Hope, long buried under centuries of tyranny, began to stir once more. Supreme Commander Veltar stood in the war room of the hegemony's most powerful fortress, his 6 eyes burning with rage as he studied the holographic display. The defeat at Theta Graveyard had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. In 1,000 years of rule, the hegemony had never suffered such a crushing defeat. "Show me the recordings again," he commanded, his voice like grinding stone. The hologram flickered, displaying the impossible battle where a single ship had destroyed 200 of their finest vessels. Veltar watched the human ship phase through solid matter, appear in multiple places at once, and use weapons that bent reality itself. "Analysis?" he asked his chief scientist. The ship appears to use technology that manipulates space-time directly, the scientist replied nervously. Our weapons cannot target it because it exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. And its weapons... The scientist paused, clearly struggling to explain. They use gravity, quantum forces, and dimensional manipulation in ways we thought impossible. Veltar's massive fists clenched. And the crew? Humans. A primitive species that has only been spacefaring for a few centuries. Somehow, they have successfully bonded with architect technology. The architects, Veltar hissed. Those ancient fools who thought power should be used to protect the weak instead of rule them. An aide rushed into the room, clearly frightened. Supreme Commander, we have reports coming in from across the galaxy. Human colonies are being attacked by our sector fleets, but the black ship keeps appearing to defend them. Veltar had ordered the attacks himself. If he couldn't destroy the humans directly, he would force them to reveal themselves by threatening innocent civilians. But the plan was failing badly. Losses? He asked. Severe, sir. The human ship destroyed an entire battle group at New Tokyo. Another fleet was crippled defending the mining colony at Kepler 442. Every time we attack human settlements, that ship appears and destroys our forces. The Supreme Commander moved to the tactical display, studying reports from across hegemony space. The humans weren't just defending their own colonies anymore. The black ship was appearing wherever the hegemony oppressed other species, freeing slaves, destroying prison camps, and shattering supply lines. They're making us look weak, he growled. Every victory they achieve inspires more rebellion, as, if summoned by his words, another aide appeared. Sir, we have uprisings on 12 worlds. The subject species are refusing to work, and some are openly attacking our garrison forces. Veltar's rage boiled over. He swept his arm across the tactical display, scattering holographic projectors. Enough! Ready the Grand Fleet! Every ship, every weapon! I will personally hunt down these humans and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the hegemony. Meanwhile, aboard the Void Cutter, Captain Lee Dong-soo felt the strain of constant battle wearing on his crew. They had been fighting for weeks, jumping from system to system, striking at hegemony forces wherever they found them oppressing innocent people. Captain, Dr. Yoon Hae-jin said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion, I need to talk to you about the crew. Dong-soo looked up from the tactical display where he had been planning their next strike. The doctor looked tired, her face pale and drawn. What is it? The neural interfaces we use to control the ship are taking a toll on everyone. Park Ji-ho has been experiencing temporal displacement. Sometimes he thinks he's living events that happened hours ago. Kim So-ra's spatial awareness is becoming distorted. She sometimes sees the ship in multiple locations at once, even when we're standing still. Dong-soo felt a chill. What about the others? Choi Min-ho is having trouble distinguishing between different realities. The security systems show him things that may or may not be real. Lim Jae-sung's connection to the weapons is so deep that he's starting to perceive matter and energy the way the ship does. And Woo Jin? She paused. Woo Jin is beginning to phase out of normal time-space during combat. Sometimes I can't even see him clearly. And me? Dr. Yoon Hae-jin met his eyes. You're holding us all together, Captain. But the strain on your mind is enormous. You're trying to coordinate 6 human consciousness with an alien artificial intelligence while fighting a war across the galaxy. I don't know how much longer any of us can keep this up. She is right. Keth Moore's voice spoke in their minds. The power required to operate at full capacity is burning out your neural pathways. If we continue at this pace, you will all be lost. Dong-soo slumped in his command chair. But if we stop fighting, the hegemony will destroy every human colony in the galaxy. They're using our people as bait. There may be another way, Keth Moore said, but it would require the ultimate sacrifice from all of you. Before anyone could ask what that meant, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Kim So-ra, despite her disorientation, managed to check her sensors. Captain, massive fleet approaching. It's bigger than anything we've seen before. On the main view screen, they watched as hundreds of ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these weren't ordinary hegemony vessels. These were the massive dreadnoughts of the Grand Fleet, ships the size of cities with weapons that could crack planets. How many? Dong-soo asked. Over 1,000 ships, sir. And they're all converging on our position. Park Ji-ho, experiencing one of his temporal displacement episodes, suddenly looked up with fear in his eyes. Captain, I can see what's coming. This isn't just an attack. It's a trap. They've positioned ships around every human colony, every space station, every inhabited world. If we run, they'll destroy them all. Choi Min-ho checked his security readings, though half of what he saw might have been illusions caused by his neural damage. Sir, they're not just here to destroy us. They want to make an example that will break the spirit of every species in the galaxy. Supreme Commander Veltar's voice echoed across all communication channels. Humans of the Black Ship, hear me? You have 10 minutes to surrender yourselves, or I will order the simultaneous destruction of every human world in the galaxy. Billions will die because of your defiance. Dong-Su looked at his crew, seeing the damage that weeks of impossible battles had done to them. They were all slowly losing their humanity, becoming something else, as they merged more deeply with the ship's systems. Options? He asked. Lim Jae-sung, his perception now seeing matter and energy as quantum patterns, spoke without looking up from his weapons console. I can target maybe 100 ships before they overwhelm us, but there are too many. Pilot Wu Jin, who was flickering in and out of visible reality, managed to stabilize long enough to speak. I can get us out of here, but they'll follow through and destroy the colonies. There is one possibility, Kethmore said quietly, but it would mean complete neural integration. You would no longer be entirely human. The process might destroy your individual consciousness, but it would also unlock my full potential. Together, we could end this threat permanently. Dr. Yoon. Hae-jin understood immediately. You're talking about permanent fusion with the ship's systems. We would become part of the Void Cutter forever. Yes, and there is no guarantee that your personalities would survive the integration. You might cease to exist as individuals. Dong-Su looked at each member of his crew. They were already changing, already losing pieces of themselves to the ship's power. But they were also the only thing standing between the hegemony and the destruction of human civilization. What does everyone think? He asked. One by one, his crew gave their answer. Park Ji-ho, caught between past and present, nodded. Kim So-ra, seeing multiple realities simultaneously, agreed. Choi Min-ho, unable to tell what was real anymore, accepted. Lim Jae-sung, perceiving the universe as patterns of energy, consented. Pilot Wu Jin, existing partially outside normal space-time, flickered his agreement. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin was the last to decide. If we do this, we might save billions of lives, but we'll lose ourselves in the process. Maybe, Dong-Su said. Or maybe we'll become something better. Supreme Commander Veltar's countdown reached 0. Time is up, humans. Prepare to watch your species burn. Captain Dong-Su took a deep breath and placed his hand on the central control interface. Kethmore, do it. Integrate us completely. Are you certain? There is no return from this path. Dong-Su looked at his crew one last time, seeing the people who had followed him into the unknown and were now willing to sacrifice everything to protect innocent lives. We're certain. Let's finish this. The ship began to change, and so did they all. The moment Captain Lee Dong-Su's hand touched the integration interface, reality exploded around them. The boundaries between human consciousness and alien technology dissolved like sugar in water. Each crew member felt their individual thoughts, expanding, merging, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Park Ji-ho's engineering knowledge flowed into the ship's quantum processors. His understanding of how things worked, combined with Kethmore's ancient wisdom, created new possibilities that had never existed before. Kim So-ra's navigation skills merged with the ship's dimensional awareness, allowing them to see not just where things were, but where they could be across multiple realities. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin felt her scientific mind connecting with databases of knowledge older than human civilization. Choi Min-ho's protective instincts merged with the ship's defensive systems, creating an unshakable determination to guard the innocent. Lim Jae-sung's warrior spirit flowed into weapons that could reshape the fundamental forces of the universe. Pilot Jang Woo-jin experienced the most dramatic change. His consciousness expanded beyond the limits of normal space and time, allowing him to pilot the ship through dimensions that existed between reality and possibility. And Captain Dong-Su found himself at the center of it all, his leadership connecting every part of their merged consciousness, holding them together as they became something entirely new. Supreme Commander Veltar watched from his flagship as the black ship began to change. The vessel's hull started to flow like liquid, growing larger and more complex. New weapon ports opened along its surface, and energy readings spiked beyond his instrument's ability to measure. "What is happening?" one of his officers asked in terror. "They're integrating with the ship," Veltar replied, his voice filled with both fear and rage. "The humans are becoming one with architect technology." "Sir, should we attack now, before the process is complete?" Veltar raised his hand. "Wait, let them finish. I want to see what they become before I destroy them. It will make our victory even more meaningful." The integration process reached its peak. For a moment that lasted forever, the crew of the Void Cutter ceased to exist as individuals. Their consciousness scattered into quantum fragments, each piece carrying memories, skills, and personality traits that had made them human. Then slowly, they began to reform. But they were different now. Park Ji-ho was still Park Ji-ho, but he was also part of something larger. He could feel his crewmates' thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. Kim So-ra retained her identity, but now she existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, seeing all possible paths through space and time. The others experienced similar transformations. They were still themselves, but they were also more. They had become a collective consciousness that operated as one while maintaining their individual personalities. "We are complete," Kethmore's voice spoke. But now, it was also their voice. "We are what the architects intended. Organic creativity, merged with unlimited power." Supreme Commander Veltar decided he had seen enough. "All ships open fire! Destroy that abomination!" The Grand Fleet unleashed its full fury. 1,000 warships fired every weapon they possessed. Energy beams capable of melting moons, gravity bombs that could collapse stars, and reality warping. Weapons that existed only in the hegemony's most secret arsenals all struck the Void Cutter at once. The merged consciousness that had once been 6 humans and an ancient AI felt the attack coming long before it arrived. Time slowed to a crawl as they considered their response. They could see every possible outcome, every potential move their enemies might make. Instead of dodging or defending, they chose something else entirely. The Void Cutter absorbed the attack. Every beam of energy, every explosive force, every reality-warping effect was drawn into the ship's hull and converted into raw power. The vessel grew brighter, more solid, more real than anything else in the space around it. "Impossible," Veltar whispered. "Nothing can absorb that much firepower." Then the Void Cutter began to rewrite the rules of physics in the local area. Space itself became malleable, responding to the will of the merged consciousness within the ship. What had been a battlefield became something else entirely. The hegemony ships found their weapons turning against them. Energy beams curved back on themselves, striking the ships that had fired them. Missiles forgot their targets and attacked their own launchers. The very space around the fleet began to fold and twist, trapping ships in loops of distorted reality. But the merged consciousness wasn't trying to destroy the enemy fleet. Instead, they were teaching them a lesson about power and its proper use. Ship after ship found its weapons systems disabled, not destroyed, but simply made unable to fire. Engines stopped working, not because they were damaged, but because the local laws of physics had been changed to make them impossible. Communication systems began broadcasting messages of peace instead of orders to attack. Supreme Commander Veltar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was rendered helpless without a single ship being destroyed. "This is impossible. We are the masters of this galaxy. We have ruled for 1,000 years. The voice that answered him came from everywhere at once, speaking directly into the minds of every being in the fleet. It was human in its warmth and compassion, but alien in its vast understanding of the universe. "Your time is over," the voice said. "For too long you have used power to oppress the weak. You have made strength into cruelty and turned order into tyranny. No more." Across the galaxy, something extraordinary began to happen. Every hegemony ship, every weapons platform, every instrument of oppression simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, but transformed. Weapons that had been used to enslave became tools for building. Ships designed for conquest found themselves reprogrammed to carry supplies to those in need. The prison camps opened their doors. The slave worlds found their chains dissolved. Species that had been oppressed for centuries suddenly discovered that their oppressors' weapons no longer functioned. This is the gift of the architects, The merged consciousness explained to the galaxy. Power used not to dominate, but to protect. Strength used not to crush, but to lift up those who have fallen. Supreme. Commander Veltar, his fleet helpless around him, made one last desperate attempt to maintain control. "You cannot do this! Without order, without control, the galaxy will fall into chaos." "There will be order," the consciousness replied, "but it will be the order of justice, not tyranny. The order of cooperation, not conquest." The Void Cutter began to change again, growing larger and more complex. Parts of the ship detached themselves, becoming smaller vessels that spread across the galaxy. Each one carried a fragment of the merged consciousness, a guardian that would watch over the systems where it was stationed. On Earth, people looked up at the stars and saw ships of impossible beauty descending from space. But these weren't invaders. They were protectors, guardians sent by their own people who had chosen to sacrifice their humanity to save their species and countless others. The captain who had once been Li Dongsu felt a moment of sadness for what they had lost. They were no longer entirely human, no longer individuals in the way they had been. But they were also something greater, something that could protect the innocent and ensure that tyranny would never again hold sway over the galaxy. "Do you regret our choice?" Kethmore asked, though the question came from all of them now. The consciousness that contained fragments of 6 human souls considered the question. They thought of the billions of lives saved, the countless species freed from oppression, the galaxy transformed from a place of fear into a realm of hope. "No," they answered as one. "We became what we needed to become." The Void Cutter settled into a slow orbit around the galactic center, its work complete, but its vigil never-ending. The ship had been silent for centuries, waiting for the right crew. Now it was silent again, but this time it was the silence of a guardian at rest, watching over those it had sworn to protect. Across the galaxy, new civilizations began to grow. Species that had been enemies learned to work together. Technologies developed for war were turned to peaceful purposes. And always, in the darkness between the stars, the descendants of humanity watched and waited, ready to act if evil ever threatened the innocent again. The galaxy's deadliest ship was silent once more. But now it was the silence of peace, not death. And in that silence, hope lived eternal.